Hello, this is Bernie Cody, CEO of Bullseye Media, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Murphy with Persomnus.
Murph Doggy Dog.
Murph Doggy Dog.
Well, so I finished the last one with a little rap, so I can start this one with my rap name. So
yes, so to catch everyone up, in our last episode, we depressed all of our listeners and said you should never do sleep. It's going to be a total disaster.
A lot of drinking going on across America today.
And it ended with a little M&M.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So in that last podcast, I had mentioned about that it is difficult to start a clinical practice. It's absolutely worth it because once you get it going, it can be highly profitable and you can really have an impact on people's lives. So it's absolutely something that is a worthy endeavor, just like all things in life worth having, sometimes tough. And so I was telling my story in the last podcast about just how I stumbled upon dental sleep medicine and it worked for me. And you've had that experience of starting a sleep practice. Mm-hmm. So expand upon, I've said from a patient perspective why it's difficult.
Right.
Talk about from a physician perspective why it's difficult.
Yeah, so it is difficult. And it's funny because in the last podcast, and you said it very well, somebody will go to one of those weekend classes and they'll hear about here's what you get paid for each device and here's how technically, clinically easy it is to do the device, the knowledge base in terms of what you need to know to do this is not that huge. You do much more difficult things on a daily basis. This task will feel simple. You need to have a broad knowledge base behind it so you know all these little things that can go wrong. But it's fairly simple to do. Compensation is fantastic, and I don't just mean financial. I mean watching patients get better is always important for us. It's a tremendous feedback mechanism when you see people get healthy, people get back in bed with each other, people watch their comorbidities get managed, they start to lose weight. So there's tremendous positive reinforcement for those modifications. And then the second part of that is your team gets supercharged by it. So, you getting fired up and watching the patients get well, and then your team really feels fulfilled because of what we're doing, just like when you do a big cosmetic case. Yeah. When you're doing just routine fillings, little things that people can't appreciate in the back teeth, it's hard to get all psyched up about that. But you do a big cosmetic case and they change their smile and their bite and everything feels great. Home run feels great.
Yeah.
And you get that every day with sleep, or at least say 3 out of 4 times or 5 out of 6 times. And then the final part is, the financial remuneration is quite good, but it's hard. And nobody tells you that and you've heard this, the overnight success that you see in fill in the blank, this doctor or that doctor that's telling you about sleep, the overnight success you see in them getting rid of their regular dental practice. They become so successful, they only do sleep, they do it 3 days a week, they do $1.5 million or $2 million a year. And you're like, holy crap, I want to do that. And what we do is we say, here we are, and that's where I want to be. And then we draw a line, and we draw a straight line.
Yeah.
And it's not a straight line. It's a very crooked, what up line. It's all messed up. And then it also goes up and down, and it goes right and left. And then not only that, it's not like a 6-month line. It's not even a 9 or a 12-month line. It might be a 2 or 3 or 4 year process. And I think as dentists, it is extremely difficult for us to bring on a new activity, become adept enough at it that we feel confident and competent, and then to give ourselves the time to see that process through. Mm-hmm. We're looking for that somewhat instant gratification so that when we say, I've set that new goal, I want to have this sleep competency in my practice, and I want to do this, we think that we're going to have that in 3 or 6 or 9 months. So I would say to anyone starting out in sleep, write a plan, talk about your vision, talk about your goals, just like you would in any kind of good leadership course. Mm-hmm. And then start the sentences when you write about it. In 5 years, I will be. Be very active about the path and the words you use. In 5 years, I will be. But in 5 years, and it probably won't take 5 years, but if you set your mind to say that this process, this evolution, not revolution, could take me 5 years, you'll have a little bit more patience with yourself. I think one of the hardest things about the sleep practice is we look for those transformations to come quickly. And then we're very disappointed, we're frustrated, and we go, screw it, I'm out. Mm-hmm. The billing was hard, my staff doesn't get it, they're not screening all the patients they're supposed to, the physicians aren't sending me referrals like I wanted. This is nothing like what Dr. So-and-so has that he told me about in that weekend class.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's that time frame is just a huge negative component to that.
Yeah. I remember at the Q&A in EDSM, I don't remember what question was asked, but Dr. Drake down in San Antonio said that he did pre-COVID 180 lunch and learns a year. And his practice is fully referral. He doesn't do any more advertising. He's got 2 clinics in San Antonio. He goes back and forth between the 2, fully booked, sleep patients all day long, which is nirvana, right? It's what everybody wants to get. So I heard him say that, and I was on the panel too, and I wrote that in my notes. Excuse me. And I wanted to repeat it to somebody, but I thought I had to have written that down wrong. 180 lunch and learns is, what, they're only like 200 work days in the week, right? When you take out holidays and weekends, I think out of the 365 days a year, there's it's a little over 200. Almost every day. So I called him and I said, hey, I wrote this down and there's just no way I got this right. And he said, yeah, that's what I did. So, to get to that point in life is difficult. And we are going to have a podcast on that topic about a way to get doctors to refer to you. But back to...
But that's not the best place to start.
Yeah, so where do you start? Where do you start?
Yeah, so the Drake formula, by the way, he goes by Drake now.
Oh, does he?
It's a rap thing. You're going to be E-Man, Murph Doggy Dog, and Drake. And you mentioned Nirvana already, so I'm good.
Yeah.
We got it all.
We got it all.
The music just never stops here. So the Drake methodology there of 180, or forget about 180, even if it was 30 or 40 a year, it's a tremendous number of lunch and learns. You actually have to earn the right to get that audience for lunch and learn.
Yep.
So there's a process and there's an evolution and there's a trust that has to be earned to get to the point where you could do those 30 or 50 or 180 lunch and learns. A. B, think about a funnel. You live in the funnel world. I live in the funnel world. So you think of this funnel of how many lunch and learns you do and how many of those doctors' offices are converted to becoming believers in what you're capable of doing and want to make referrals, and then how many of them matriculate down to actually making those referrals. And so there's a pathway that you could measure the success formula. And if you did 180, and by the way, Drake is super successful. I'm calling him Drake from now on. Next time I see him, I'm like, yo, Drake, what's up, my man? So he says he's going to know it. He's going to wonder what the hell happened to me. But he'll roll with it. So if you asked him, and in his case, it's going to be high, but if he had 180 of those and only 18 of them really were receptive to the lunch and learns, the rest were just eating the free lunch. Mm-hmm. Now he's really got 18 lunch and learns. And if half of them kind of were swayed to thinking positively about oral appliances, and of those 9, the half of the 18, right? I'm just following my math. Yeah. Of the 9, 3 of them actually started seeing patients. Was that the right expensive time, effort, and energy to start a sleep practice? And I would argue, hell no. Hell no. I'd shoot myself in the eye with a blunt instrument before I'd go do that. Because those are hard. Yeah. You would have spent all that time getting in there, and then your first and second impressions with these people weren't paying any dividends. In every single dentist practice who decides they want to get into sleep, they have a plethora, a huge number of available patients who have sleep apnea. If a practice had 2,000 patients, just going to keep the math simple. Don't spend all day, because we're dentists, going, I only have 1,472 or I have 2,260. If you had 2,000 patients, at least 25% of them have obstructive sleep apnea. 90% of those, at least 80%, let's say, have never been diagnosed. So I've got 500 patients in my practice if I have 2,000, 400 of which have never been diagnosed, 400 of which have never been diagnosed. If tomorrow I made a commitment to start this 5-year plan that we talked about, to begin by screening my patient population, and maybe I want to evolve even this screening and this mining of my own patient population for what's there, the diamonds that are under my feet. And I'm looking for these diamond mines to buy and invest in when there's diamonds under my feet, right? And that's what happens. I look for these lunch and learns when I've got things right here in front of me. If I made a commitment to do that and said, maybe I'm going to do it in a slow fashion. We're going to start with all the males. We're going to screen all the males in my practice that are over 50, because we know they're most at risk. And then we're going to add the females over 50. Then we're going to add everybody else. Because I look at you and you tell your sleep apnea story, and I'm like, dude, you look like a fitness buff. You're healthy. You're fit. No way you have sleep apnea. 23 times an hour, right? It's crazy. Yeah. Right. So you do have those outliers. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to segment the population, you'd say men over 50 overweight. Done. Snorers, if you add that, boom, that's a lock. You'd have 90% of that population. However you decide to screen, you have to make a commitment to that. Now, it's not me telling my team to screen. It's me leading my team to screen. And that's a big difference, because in dentistry, we didn't go to business management school. We didn't get MBAs. We're not trained to be leaders. We're trained to work in a foreign circle. really successfully and pretty much on our own with somebody just sucking spit next to us. And so we're not really good communicators with the patient's head or with our staff's head. We're really good at telling people what to do and then expecting them to be excellent at it without ever having the leadership skills. We're good at managing a list of things and checking them off, but we're not good at leading people to a preferred place where they'd feel like they'd want to do something. It's this idea of telling and creating a meaningful, emotional, engaging story with our team about this better place that we can help our patients get to. And when we paint this picture of this place, then they'll want to figure out how to get there with us. Mm-hmm. If I tell them to screen rather than engage them in a conversation about how important this is and how many patients in our practice, and we keep talking about, let's put it in these words, the problem, sleep apnea in our patient population, until they finally say, well, we should be screening those patients. Boom, a light bulb went off in somebody's head. Mm-hmm. And then, how will we screen it? Boom, another light bulb went off. Or we could do it in hygiene. Yeah, that'd be the best place. Pretty soon it's their idea, not my idea. Leadership is about helping other people see the possibilities. There's a big difference between management and leadership. Management is making sure we do things right. Leadership is making sure we're doing the right things. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that they're doing things right in terms of the screening is us poking down from the top, telling them what they're supposed to be doing, but painting this picture of a preferred future where we're screening our patients and helping them get healthier, and we're doing fulfilling things for them, we're changing people's lives, and it's meaningful. Mm-hmm. That's the story that's going to give them a moment of impact that they can buy into, that they can grab onto, and they'll help you solve those problems of how do we do it, when do we do it, how successfully do it, how do we track what we do. But for me to just tell them, hardly ever going to be a very successful story.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, as I talk about my results with the device, I've never run into my dentist office. Last time I went, 3 or 4 months ago, I got a crown. And so I went back the other day and got my teeth cleaned. And I didn't say, hey, Dr. Buchanan, man, that crown, really, that was something. Boy, my life is better because of that.
Well, you've talked about your sleep apnea.
Heck yeah.
Dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah. I would have come back and every time said to the staff, man, thank goodness for that. I'm feeling better. I'm sleeping better. I've got more energy, the whole thing. So I love the fact that you talked about the leadership aspect of how you get staff to screen patients. What I'll pivot to is the very tactical way that you can educate those.
You almost sound like a dentist when you say that. Okay. So tell me, how do I actually do that?
Yeah, exactly.
But you see the disconnect in that can sometimes occur. And you and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Giving them the checklist of what they're supposed to ask and how they're supposed to score it, and then how they're supposed to tell that patient they need to have a sleep test and they should have a consult with the doctor. That's the mechanical part. That's the tactical part. Yeah. Totally get that. Super important, right? But without the leadership component that inspires them to want to do that, they will sabotage because you're asking them to do more work. And if they don't understand the fulfillment in it, they will sabotage that. We go to a conference, we come back, got this great idea, we're going to institute this change on Monday, and on Wednesday we've thrown it out the door. Yep. And they're waiting for me to go to the next conference, and they load up like this and get ready for me to come back. So it's critical, this leadership. But the tactical part, easy.
Yeah.
I've taught practices for years now to have two pieces of the puzzle that they want to put together for the patient. And I'm thinking ahead to helping that patient make a decision about their health. And this is important too. I'm just screening at this phase. And I don't know whether this patient is going to be positive on the screener or negative. Now, maybe I have some ideas because I see the patient, they look like they're over 50, they look like they're overweight, and they look like they're male. So I'm three out of the 8 stop bang items are already checked off the box. If I ask them about snoring, we get to 4, boom, it's done. So I'm maybe leaning in that direction, but I don't know yet. But I'm setting up the patient in such a way that the screening answers a question that they want to know. Do I have this disease? Mm-hmm. So if they don't know about sleep apnea and they just think it's snoring, first thing I want to do is somehow in this conversation connect those two things, that this very serious, life-threatening, life-shortening disease, we see that almost all the time with snoring. When somebody snores, it's not 100%, but we've got a very high correlation between people that snore usually have sleep apnea. Mm-hmm. Sleep apnea is a very serious thing. Yep. It's not just snoring. Because even in ProSomnus, we talk about this all the time, there's so many people who talk to us about their snoring. They reach out to us as a company. I heard about your snore device. I heard about your snore thing. It's like, it's not about the snore. I'm not going to shit about the snoring.
Yeah.
I mean, I do care about the snoring, but I tell people all the time, we don't always fix that. We usually do. So, yeah. So, I mean, really, it's not a clinical disorder. Yeah. It's like stain on your teeth. It's ugly, but it's not pathologic.
Yeah.
Stain on your teeth looks ugly, and it might stop you from being successful at a lot of things, but it's not causing periodontitis. It's not causing you to lose your teeth. It doesn't cause decay. It's just ugly. So the removal of stain is polite and it's nice, and we should do that. But that's where snoring fits in.
Yeah.
But the screening is two things. The screening questionnaire, like an Epworth Sleepiness Scale, which is not a very meaningful tool. It doesn't correlate well to whether or not they have apnea. It correlates very well to whether or not they're tired, drowsiness. But there's so many reasons for drowsiness and tired that the correlation between does a patient have sleep apnea because they had a high Epworth Sleepiness Scale or a high excessive daytime sleepiness doesn't seem to correlate well. But it's a conversation starter. That's all I wanted that for. So the Epworth Sleepiness Scale on the health history, added to the health history, added to the catch-up health history when a patient's coming in for the recare visit is a great way to open the door. Now, you've got most of the other things that are in the stop bang. The stop bang are the 8 items that if they have 3, they're at moderate risk. If they have 4, they're at high risk or more. 5, 6, 7, still the same as 4. 92% correlation, by the way, mathematically, with the predictability about a patient having 4 or more and having sleep apnea. So high that some pundits are talking about we should quit doing sleep tests. We should use the stop bang. I think that's irresponsible, but I can understand their merit because there's a fairly good correlation. And the stop bang is simple. Most people know, but it's S, do you snore? Okay. T, are you tired? Again, maybe you pick up that one from the sleepiness scale. I can't tell by looking at the patient if they snore. Tired. I asked them those questions, the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. O, has there been an observed stop breathing? Your daughter shook you, woke you up because you were gasping for air. Right? You're like, holy crap, it scared the crap out of her. So I'll have to ask that question too. So the snoring and the observed, I gotta probe a little bit more. So STOP, well, you know whether they're hypertensive or not because you have their health history.
Right.
And maybe you broaden that discussion to say, what if they had arrhythmia or GERD or a history of some heart problems? What if they had a comorbidity that's often associated with sleep apnea? Even though that's not technically in the algorithm that's used for stop bang, I'd probably lean in that way for that discussion. So now I've got STOP, now I've got BANG, B, BMI. I don't have to put them on a scale and measure their height. I do to calculate their BMI. But you can look at somebody and say, if they're a little bit stocky, they're probably knocking on 30's door for a BMI. I'm this picture of buff and fitness, as you can clearly see,
Yes.
and I'm a 29.1 BMI because I carry a lot of muscle mass. Almost every NFL football player would have a BMI that puts them into the sleep apnea.
Is that where you were kind of showing off, like, I've got lots of muscle mass?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you go to the gym and you see all the muscle mass people, they almost all have sleep apnea.
Really?
The muscle mass crowd has tightened up their necks, increased their muscle size, and decreased the space that their airway normally constitutes.
Really?
It's rampant in gyms.
Huh.
People, not only the casual person going to work out, of course not, that's just fitness, but the people that are building.
Yeah.
And if you think of an NFL athlete, they're generally building because of that strength. So it's huge propensity for sleep apnea in professional athletes that build bulk. Not as much for a marathon runner, not as much for certain swimmers, things like that.
Yeah.
Everybody's building bulk. So BMI. A, age. You know the patient's age because that's in their health history. N, neck size. Well, I'd like to put a tape measure on everybody's neck, but let's just do this. If they're overweight, they probably have a large neck. Yeah. 17 in men, 15 in women. I do have a 17 neck. You don't. I can clearly see that. I used to sell clothes, so you're probably a 15. It might be a 14 and a half, but you wear 15 for comfort. So somewhere around there. There you go. So I've sold shirts, lots of clothes. Nice shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
So, and then after the neck size, it's gender. Well, we generally know the patient's gender. So think of that, STOP, BANG. We have almost all of those. So you could say, I noticed here you said you're kind of sleepy. I know you've got hypertension. You're over 50. You're male. I can see you're a little overweight. Maybe you don't mention that one too loud. Don't say they're fat. Whatever. Yeah. And you say, has your spouse, has your partner ever said that they've noticed you're snoring? I thought, yeah. Anybody ever noticed you stop breathing? Those are all actually indications. And you've got so many of these factors that actually put you at high risk for obstructive sleep apnea. Have you ever heard of sleep apnea? Now you're in the conversation of taking this from a very innocent conversation opening Epworth Sleepiness Scale, combining with what you've got in their chart and what you can observe. And the only 2 questions you really have to ask are, do you snore? Has anyone ever seen you stop breathing? And now you've got a complete stop bang on that patient, visually, chart recommendation, a couple quick conversations. And now it's easy to take that conversation to a consultation with the dentist, if that's the pathway you choose. Maybe it's a consultation with a sleep specialist in your practice, maybe a team member that really has those conversations with the patient. For me, I would like it to be me, the dentist, and I think most of us would, but if you're not that good of a communicator, hand that off to somebody else. But that's how you mine your patient population. The low-hanging fruit, as you call it. I like that. That's a marketing term. Low-hanging fruit, to say these are the easy ones to pick off. And if my numbers were right, and you said 2,000 patients, 500 apneics, 400 untreated, you screen and you found those 400. And you actually found the 500. Some of them hate their CPAP, by the way, so they're still in play.
They all hate their CPAP.
But let's just stay with the 400, make it easy. And if you were only successful with half of them, 200. And the 200 moved forward, and you did one a week, you have patients for 4 years to get started in dental sleep medicine.
Yeah.
One device a week for 4 years. During that time, you can start to work on your direct-to-consumer strategies and tactics. How am I going to get referrals from physicians or other dentists in the area who don't want to do sleep? You can start to layer on. That's why I talk about this being, if you give yourself in 5 years, I will have this thriving, because in 5 years, you'll have gone through all your patients. Mm-hmm. And now the only patients you can mine are the new patients that come in.
Yep.
So that's going to go away. So while you've got the 2 or 3 or 4 years of mining your own patient population, you start to plant those seeds, and you can't harvest and eat what you planted today.
Right.
You got to wait for that stuff to grow.
Yeah. So thank you. That was great. So a couple of things from a marketing perspective that people can do. As you mentioned on the stop bang, you've got all that right in front of you. You also have got everything you need to reach out to your patients that is a not HIPAA violation, right? An email address, a phone number, a physical address.
Absolutely.
You can mail postcards because maybe when I come in to get my teeth cleaned.
Do you snore? It could be sleep apnea.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Or I say, I don't snore. And my partner gets this in the mail and says, "Are you kidding? You sound like a freight train every day, right?" So, making sure that family knows. So mailers, emails, text, notices in the lobby, where you can have articles about sleep apnea out. You can have a sign about it. Are you snoring? You can have a QR code at the checkout desk that says "Learn more about sleep apnea." As if your your hygienist is doing a screen and he or she thinks that a patient is potential suffers from sleep apnea, same thing. Have a QR code. Have a brochure. But it's funny. I was in California last week, and it's a husband and wife practice. And they sat me down and they said, our practice is booming, but we want to do more implants and cosmetics, and you're just not coming in the door. And they're our clients, so I know their website, and I know what they do for social, I know what they do blogs, because we do it all. And I said, I'm so grateful you've told me this. I can help you, but how in the world would somebody out there in the world know that you want to do more implants and cosmetics? You've got to, the exact same way that you said you would mine a patient database about sleep. I said, you've got to do all these things. You've got to start blogging about it. You've got to change your website to show that feature. You need to have your social be about it. You need to have awareness as people come in the office about it. And guess what? Over time, people will come to you for their implants and cosmetics. But right now, and the thing is that this couple is brilliant. They're part of all these different study clubs. And they travel around the country being experts in this, and are frustrated that they didn't have enough patients. And they said, well, you gotta focus on letting them know, So I think it's the same thing with sleep. Well, we will wrap this one up. And I appreciate you sharing with people getting into sleep. How they can, all the low-hanging fruit, how they can go after their own patients.
Mining your own patients is the best place to start.
Yep.
They're there. And the other thing that you've got an advantage with them is that they know, love, and trust you already.
Yeah. Well, 2
out of 3 is not bad.